Hello everyone and welcome to this video where we're going to be retrofitting and upgrading two of my largest planes that I've made to date. Now granted, I understand they're not that large in the grand scheme of things, but they are quite useful. So of course we have the PNG one, which is the Flying Penguin. It's a seaplane, and we have this massive warplane. Now the warplane I will be reconfiguring into non-warplane versions specifically for OMA and ALTA, specifically in the back hatch here to transport Unicon containers. Currently we have this sort of SAP war vehicle in here, but as you know, I'm just not huge on the war sort of side of things, the weaponry. Yes, I did kind of have fun with making this version, but that said, that's not really my main go-to. Here is a quick teaser of what we're going to be building in this video. I know it's a long video, but if you stay tuned, you're going to see all the decisions, all the ideas, and all the changes that came into this. We have the ALTA transport plane, which actually has not 3 but 4 Unicon slots and the ability for a loader, so you could put 3 slots of Unicon and a Uni-loader. Or we have the OMA version, which is the same size as the war plane, having 3 Unicon slots, or you could enable this back one and fit 2 Unicons and a Uni-loader. So we're going to be building these. I think they turned out great, so stay tuned. For the Flying Penguin, I actually already went through, added a bunch of air vents so there is, you know, proper breathing in the cabin. I didn't have space to put a air filter, so if you do submerge this part, water will be coming in through the vents themselves, but the idea is that that top part really should not be submerged. For this bottom part, it does have a filter, and we do have these cabins and such, and I did kind of just make some minor fixes throughout. Of course, we have a variety of different systems built into this vehicle here, including thermostat. I did do some upgrading. You can see here's the fluid port for the air in here, standard, but I think we might be able to fit a Unicon in here. And then up the stairs in the cockpit, we have all of our various things. Now, the displays themselves probably could be retrofit, but the main purpose of them is acceptable, I would say. So it doesn't really hurt, and it doesn't look too bad. Now, this plane is funny because it does kind of function as a water vehicle as well. Let's see if this works. My auto takeoff. Does work. It's a little jumpy, but we're up, so that's nice. Alright, and I believe there's a high gear. I could hear my RPMs just going crazy here. Somewhere has to be my high gear. There we go. The top speed. Cool. So in this case, RPS is a little bit more under control. So there's a couple of things that I would definitely change if I was making this right now. Specifically, how like hold altitude is 1 and that stuff, but it doesn't really hurt. Like, it's just not the most clean setup, but it is still pretty capable. Alright, so I tend to always put a little up arrow now for high gear, so I think that would be a little bit more meaningful. Emergency locator, front magall, stuff like this. I mean, now looking back, I probably wouldn't place these things together. Also, like water takeoff, land takeoff, they very easily could have just had one single takeoff, and the plane can calculate out whether or not we're in the water or not. But again, the overall ideas here now, talking about fitting a Unicon cargo in here. If I do grab the bottom of this door and expand it downwards like this, we kind of end up with something like that. Now, it doesn't look very pretty down here, but will that be enough to fit a Unicon container? Also, I do think it is a bit overkill to have it on both sides. Not for any, like, real problem, but just, it's not really needed. I mean, you have one main cargo door, and the other could be a window or something. You're not really going to need two doors for one small space like this, really. So I could go ahead and delete some of this stuff. And I mean, not only will that make less bodies, which will make it ideally less laggy, but also just less moving parts and kind of a little bit of a cleaner arrangement in terms of the interior. On this side, this will look much nicer. We got a wall of windows, and then on this side, just have to clean up the door frame itself. So now with the door filled in like this, it may be possible to place an H4 connector here for the Unicons. Maybe. It may be too big still, but let's see. So if we place this down... Well, looking at the size of the door, it may just fit barely, kind of close to these seats here, which is unfortunate. I wish I could just push this back out by one, but I'm not really looking forward to that. Granted, I could push the whole door, I believe, to the left a little bit, and that may actually work. We'll just see if it'll collide with this very important part here that I definitely don't want to accidentally move. So if we do this, I mean, whether or not we put a window there is irrelevant. We have a lot of windows on the other side, and we have this big window in the door, and then this thing would actually fit a lot nicer. Sometimes it's also just styling points, and sometimes it's functionality points. So in this case, we could do something like this, and once the color scheme is finalized, you'll see right away that it does look much better on the exterior. Now we'll see if this collides. That's number one, and then we're gonna see if the cargo can actually fit in here. Now keep in mind, because it is a water vehicle, it has to be airtight. Now this door may be just big enough to get a cargo container in here. And you could see the size of it, height-wise, should fit. We're going to do an actual test with a loader to see if we can get it in properly. So everything's arranged. First things first. Alright, that opens up. That's a good sign. We'll hop in here. And then in this case, we're actually going to use the magnet rather than the connector, because we're going in at a sideways angle. So we'll turn on the magulls, and once we're connected, we'll have to lift this up. Okay, tilt it forward a little bit. Now, definitely if you're playing in single player by yourself, it'll be a little difficult if you're using first person. Oh, amazing, look at that. And then if I disconnect myself, I can come back. So I would call this absolutely a success. And then in this case, we can go ahead and remove this stuff, and this will go into being the final version of this creation that goes to the shop once I'm done. Now this one is the one that is quite substantial, both in visual appeal and also in functionality. This is a pretty big vehicle parked in this bay. We have a lot of different things down here, including the ability to open up a back hatch so you can drive vehicles right in and out. And then the forward part of this vehicle is just like the other one. It has a, well, except for the fact it has an armory, and here instead of a little crew cabin, it has a medical room. Up here it is the same. It has a little space for the crew, and in here is the cockpit. Of course, you could see that it has different controls, but the overall shape, feel, and vibe are identical, and the displays themselves are identical. Now again, I'm not huge on the war machines, but I will do a proper update for this to make it at least functional, or I've already done. So you could see here we have the air or gas relief valves, so that's now making this compatible. In here it's one big space, so there's no need for anything here. The bedroom itself does have one, perfect, and so does the armory. So this vehicle is already brought up to date in terms of the functionality aspect, so it shouldn't be, you know, falling out of the sky because there is improper parts. Let's check this vehicle. I don't believe I would have put an air vent on the gas tank, even though this vehicle's long since outdated. Even like stuff like this I would never do again. Just sort of making it a little bit nicer, and it has a trailer, but obviously not the HGS system, and it has a non-modular engine, so really this thing is very outdated. Okay, here are a bunch of gas tanks. Okay, the nice thing is it has a lot of space, and voila, at least now the truck will continue to function properly. So this one can just be updated, saved as it is, and put on the workshop. Now, of course, like I said, this isn't the main kind of thing that I want to show here, but rather what I want to do is talk about how I can make it into an OMA version once I see the vehicle here. Aha, there it is. So now we can change the name. It's called the P78. But what I do want to do is, instead of outdated now, we'll label it the Doug Craft, because that's the brand that I'm using. First, the easiest part is removing the color. Now, because I had a nice color scheme, that means I actually went through and painted all of it, but not the white pieces. So what that means is I could actually put an off-white, so it's very easy for future recoloring instead of having to manually do it. Now in here, we are going to get rid of this Jeep, and we'll put Unicon style connectors instead. That right away freed up a lot of space in here. Looks much better. And now, in addition to removing this thing, I actually want to remove all the weaponry. The main thing you'll notice with the OMA version is inside it's much more colorful. We have a defined color scheme, which is sort of blue and light wood, and is quite inviting. The whole point of OMA is to be kind of a semi-luxurious type of vehicle. All of this just looks more pleasant than, of course, the war version, which is kind of bathed in darks, very dark, all of it. So with this one, and I know it's called Fafa, just randomly hit the keyboard, I do want to change the color scheme. Now I'm curious if I go ahead and replace the color of all this and this. Ooh, that's no good. So for the cargo area, I might leave it like this, but for the upstairs portion, I think that I will put in some more vibrant colors. And here, instead of it being like kind of a military style seating, I might actually put seats, make it more of a lounge, a bit more pleasant for all. Inside all of my OMA vehicles is the exact same color scheme. You kind of see it throughout. and I do want the plane to kind of match. So taking this little clip here and seeing how we can apply it to this. So right away this dark space has to go. We don't really need this medical bay here. All of this could be changed. The backup battery doesn't have to be under the bed. We can move it somewhere else and put kind of a little cabin, I think, for the captain or somebody, even like a VIP guest. So this is, of course, a civilian and a organization. So that said, we really want to make sure that it feels inviting. So obviously gone will be the red color scheme, and we will put kind of a nice bed area here, and we'll see if we have space for something else. So the bed fits. The room is quite cramped, that is what it is, but we do now have space for 1 or 2 large windows here, which will make all the difference just for bringing in natural light, making it more pleasing to be in. Just make sure the glass is on the outside. Nope, it's on the inside, so I have to flip it around like this. So now the reflection is on the exterior. Perfect. So that will be much nicer. Now we can take the textures from here, and that's kind of why I put in this. Now I do have a black setup that already matches the black of the bed, so it just kind of looks more uniform. I'm not in love with the shape of the bed, so this kind of makes it seem more like a box, which is fully intentional. And that looks way nicer. Got the OMUA blue, and then the rest of the room will be this kind of light shade of wood or white, like what we have here. Something that I do, and you may or may not have noticed, is I'll actually place an Arctic outfit beneath the beds. So no, you can't see it, but most of my creations, if you look under the beds, you will find Arctic gear, fully intentional. And we got a plush red carpet. And the last thing we need, instead of having this player sensor, is I always put a light switch for the bedrooms. So the idea is that if you do want to turn the light off all the way and make it dark, you can. So that's kind of where that idea comes from. All of my other spaces, especially public spaces, tend to just be very easily with the player sensors, but in the bedrooms, and we'll put a nice warm kind of tone for the bedroom. Now what I always do like to do is in this type of vehicle, so we have the bedroom now. In this space, it'll be actually the lab. Just a very small lab. We'll remove all the weaponry, and it'll just serve, because the rest of the the rest of the plane will be for cargo purposes like this. But then, of course, I do want to have the ability to do some minor research, and that will be in here, so we can remove all this stuff and make it a lab. And here we're going to put in a mini laboratory from another vehicle, just so it fits in the same style. You can see it's a very, very small lab, but it has a workstation and some kind of high-tech gear for measuring things. In addition to that, I can grab a nice little map that I have, little work chart, just to give it a little bit more life. I try to minimize on the painted aspects, but sometimes things like this just give it that extra touch of life. whereas previously it would look a little plain. Now you kind of have a little machine. We're going to color this red. It's a very mini machine, but you can kind of do some tests there. This map, computer, and last but not least, let's see if I can put a microscope. Microscope. Here is my little microscope. So I'm just going to go ahead and take it. I love the copy paste function. It really just allows such a simple, easy transfer of previously created objects, even something as simple or silly as this microscope. Now I can have kind of repetition and styling similarities throughout more than one of my creations. So there we go. Now we get a microscope, we get this, and a computer. Very cramped little workroom, but a workroom nonetheless. So we're going to call this the lab. And this will be the crew room. Now just one crew, but the point is you get to rest. Now I did add these railings to the stairs, but honestly I'm thinking that maybe the best thing that I could do for this plane is to actually separate out the living areas and the cargo areas, kind of like what I did in the Flying Penguin. The point of this, first of all, is to create a very clear and unpressurized cargo area, in theory, and then to create just a nice, relaxed little space here for the crew that's not just bombarded with sound coming from this area back here. So while it does close off the space, it actually does create and define a very clear cargo area and a very clear crew area. I do like in the Flying Penguin how we have this space here with the glass and with this crew door. Very modern and nice. And not just that, the crew door implies there's like a bathroom or something beyond. Of course, here it's just our gas tank, but as a player, you don't have to know that. Now, I did step away from making this type of furniture, and instead of the gas tanks, I actually just create my own pieces using the wedges. It's simpler, gets the job done just as nice, and doesn't weigh as much or potentially have fluid inside. So for me, I sort of do something like that on all of my seats. You can see in here we don't even have seats, so that's good, and this is good. So we're going to copy this into the other plane, and this can be placed right into here as such. And now we have kind of the same type of crew area that we have in the other plane. Minor fixes here and there, minor changes, whatever tweaks will make it even better. The coloring scheme of the crew area will be brightened up, whereas for the cargo area it'll actually stay kind of dark. That's totally fine. To kind of complete the modern look, this bulkhead here, instead of being closed off, will actually feature a wall of little windows. So when you are inside the crew area, you do actually see right into the cargo bay. Realistic, probably not, but in tune with kind of the OMA lore, which is very modern style. I think that works perfectly. So now we can actually easily continue on inside the cargo area to kind of complete the look. And again, it's fine if this part is more rugged and industrial in nature, just because this portion of the plane is intended for transportation. Now right here we do have to keep that because of the landing gear, so that's fine. And over here you can see we kind of have this open area which doesn't really serve anything other than to be kind of a stepping stone to this space. And actually it doesn't quite make sense to have this crew door walking into absolutely nothing here. Now, the main point of this build is the universal cargo system that I'll be inserting. Now, yeah, a actual ISO container could fit in this hold, but what can't fit is the height. So we're just gonna stick with R10, as you can see, and H4 connectors. If you're not familiar with what those mean, those are just standards that I've developed for my creations for sort of uniformity. So you can see that is what we've put here. And now what I need is this control panel. Now the control panel will work as it does on the rest of my creations, minus the blue ISO slot. So you could see we have these other slots here. Now I actually have a version of the universal cargo system that I developed that does not have the ISO. So in this case you could see it has the blue, orange, and green, and then red for the R10. So in this case it is kind of perfect for this application. And you can see if we turn on these, we could have any one of these combinations, but if we turn on R10, then the ISOs turn off, which makes exact sense for what we need. There are a few advantages to having it on a button system rather than this lever. The advantage of the lever being you could open it and close it to whatever level you need, whereas when you have it on a button system, it'll just open to what is defined. However, the nice thing with the button system is that you can have multiple of them, and not just that, you can have even a third one of them. So it allows you to have them in the cockpit, in the back, all over the place, which does really help. So testing it with the vehicle system, you could see that our truck fit right in and connected, so that's great. And it seems to fit quite nicely in the cargo bay itself, as you can see, with space up front and behind. Now that's why we could also fit 3 Unicon cargo containers, so that's actually a really good system. And here from inside the crew area, you can always do a visual check of your cargo to make sure everything's good. So there are some minor things that I have to add and do, such as the R10 quick connect system, which means that when you have the red activated, the back one isn't actually activated until you drive past and connect to that front one. So that's something that I have to add, and other minor things such as the buttons in the cockpit to open and close the door, etc. But we're well underway of being done here. A very interesting comment on one of my plane creations actually had me change all the WASD and arrow key controls. So now AD is roll, WS is pitch, left right is yaw, and up down is throttle brakes. That was something that people had kept saying I should do. I also put these nice indicators up here instead of 4 here, kind of just modernized it a little bit. And not just that, there are some other systems that I went ahead and revamped, including this simple indicator here. When I press 1 to hold the altitude, that light engages. That is something that was sort of bothering me. Of course, I've learned a lot of things since I made these creations. Okay, I gotta fix that, but pretty much it just revolved around making it a little bit more modern, just a tad. Yes, these are very outdated creations, and by that, like, some of the styling and design just isn't up to snuff like what I would normally do. But I did try to kind of clean it up a little bit, give it a bit nicer line. Some of these things are just limitations of Stormworks without XML editing. But in essence, I do think that they hold their own They do look pretty good, but you know, there are some things that are just as good as I can get them for this creation without just redoing everything. So I did carry over these changes into kind of the working version of the airplane. You can see here with the indicators and such. And one thing that I also did do, and you'll notice that when you start to actually fly the airplane, is that I made the pitch controls a little slower. Now, that's obviously not ideal. Okay, user error. I didn't turn my avionics on. From the outside now, you could see that they actually move the flaps. So if I go ahead and kick it all the way forward and go and pull up, we should get lift. Oh, that's not very good. Interesting. Let's see what auto liftoff does. Auto liftoff. Alright, well that actually worked. Better than me manually taking it off. Now you could see that we still have relatively jerky pitch, but some of these things, I honestly don't even know if it's worthwhile to fix. It works. Maybe it's not perfect, maybe it's not pretty, but as I said, it just gets the job done. Now if I press 1, we're holding the altitude, which is nice. And then you can still go up and down, it's just much slower, and it kind of just keeps on holding that altitude for you. Now I want to see if we go into land, and then if we go into take off again. So I'm going to turn off the altitude hold. We're going to open up our landing gear. Oh, we definitely got to slow down. Now I'm going to stall out probably. Yep. Stalled her out and crashed. Now I want to see if I can manually take off. Okay, so I can. Of course, it doesn't take off as well or as quick as the auto takeoff feature, which could be a function. The auto takeoff feature could be like, you know, if you're trying to do something in an emergency setting versus a normal takeoff. And yeah, I know the plane shape is a little outdated. It's not great, but I still think that, especially with the Unicon cargo and some of these modern updates, that it should kind of hold its own. Maybe not in terms of all of my newer creations, but certainly in terms of just being a useful creation that you could use. Okay, let's try this here. So we can fully do this. Oh, we got our handbrakes on and pull up. Okay. We could still take off almost vertically here. I mean, I still like the shape. I think it's a very impressive aircraft, very large, and very capable, all things told. So those are parts that I do enjoy with it. Alright. Oh. Now, I find the roll is very slow, which might even be realistic in such a large aircraft. But you see that my pitch is good, the roll is slow, and the yaw is okay, all things told. So maybe I speed up the yaw controller a little bit just to give us a bit more kind of maneuverability. You could definitely see I'm not a great pilot, and I did invert the controls because people were asking for it. So because of that, I'm struggling a little bit, but I'll get there. One thing I did implement is the ability to attach a vehicle, R10 vehicle, and immediately this is already disconnected. So if you remember in my helicopters, I have what is called a quick connect system, whereas in this case, it should work automatically. We get over the front, and it should attach, and the back should attach. So just like that. See, comparing to the helicopter, where we have this vehicle quick connect system, so I can actually find where I have that microcontroller, which is right here, and I can change it. So this one, and put in the R10 quick connect simple, which should be the one that is only the release button. And if I implement that, I can now put this on the front one, so front connected right there. Now remember, there's two R10s in this case. There's this one for boats and this one for vehicles, so we're only using the green one in this case. So we have this, which is the R10 vehicle. We do have this OR thing, which jumps to this. So now we won't really need this OR, but instead what we have is R10 vehicle here. Plug this into the release cargo button. The rear connector release is right here. So it should be that. We have the front connected, we have the front connector release, and then of course we have this going to there. So let's see if the system works. I do like the cargo hatch button on the exterior, by the way. But anyway, in here, we turn on our vehicle connectors, and you can see this one is false. This one should be true. Perfect. And then, when we drive in, we should get an instant, easy pairing without having to jump over that back one. So you could watch here. We get ourselves aligned. Front and back. Perfect. And of course, when you have so many creations, this is really the problem. You can see here, I can also add it to my other creations just to make it easier for me to add on in the future. But in this case, we have to always note which one is the front one, in this case the left one. And then what I do here is the R10 cargo will have a vehicle easy connect, which just means that it'll not activate that back connector. So if you do want to connect something to that back, you're kind of out of luck with this current configuration, unless I do put a system with a button or whatnot. So that's kind of where this really comes into play. And now for the fun part, the decals, the decor, the coloring. So I just put this thing here, and I'm going to kind of try to match some of the color schemes. I do like the blue wings, and I do like the idea of putting that kind of blue color for the hull. So we'll see how that all turns out. Yes, again, this creation could be much, much better. I'm not at all denying that. But just don't call me lazy, because I'm very, very busy. I try to keep it interesting, keep the creations flowing, useful and fun for everyone. So if I sometimes find shortcuts just to get things out, such as this, I don't think you could blame me. Anyway, this will be the coloring portion. Here it is, the OMUA version. I do think this color scheme looks quite slick on it, and you could see that I put some details that weren't otherwise in the other version, such as the extra landing lights and stuff. Overall, I'd say it's a modernization without being a full-on revamp on and kind of replacement. Now they do say bigger is better. I will see for the ALTA version if we can extend this plane a little bit and have at least one more Unicon cargo slot. Now with the location of the wings, it is a little bit awkward, as to where we can extend it. Kind of what I was dragging out back there doesn't look right for the position of the wheels and the position of the wings. We're going to test out to see if the system works. So over here we got our camera. We can open the door. And then let's drive the truck in. Now the one thing we'll have to do from the get-go is say R10 Cargo Easy Vehicle Connect. Perfect. And now inside here, once we make our way over top of that connector, it should join in, and then the back, and now we're good. We can turn off the truck, close the door, and make our way to the cockpit. Now inside the cockpit, you just have to make sure to fire up the avionics and both sets of engines so you can see them both on. And now let's give it full throttle. Okay, full throttle, and lastly collective. Oh, handbrake is on, and we lift up. So you can see that it really does work. It takes off even with the vehicle load here in the cargo bay. Put it in high gear, and we are off to the races. So this is a great success in my opinion. Small revamp, but very, very useful. To make this a nicer, bigger plane version for the ALTA organization, I do want it to put extra cargo. So right now we have 3 Unicon cargo slots. It would be nice to add 1 or 2 more cargo slots. Now in this kind of lobby area, we can do that. So we could lose a little bit of this for a bit more functional space. And I'm going to start by dragging this out by, it looks like, 4 blocks. So with that dragged out to there, I think that will give us a little bit of extra flexibility and space to be able to make kind of what I have in mind for the cabin as well as for the rest of the creation. Just reconfiguring the interior here for this smaller space. And what's interesting is you could see here it gives us a little bit extra space. Will it be enough? I honestly may have to squeeze this some more. But one thing that I can do right away is, rather than having the 2 separate rooms like what we had for OMA that had a little lab, we don't actually need that. I can go ahead and put 1 room with 2 bunks, and that's going to kind of be the bedroom or sleeping area for the pilots and or crew that are on board the flight. So that way it really does make for a bit more space in this area. And the added benefit actually is that I can push this all in some more and free up more space for cargo, because ultimately it's not a commercial flight, it's a flight that it has a very specific job, and that is to transport cargo. So what we can do is place where the bunks go, and we can put the beds, as I always do, beneath the beds here. I'm going to put the Arctic clothing, so that right away lets these people have clothing for Arctic conditions. We don't need 2 heaters, we don't need any of this stuff coming out here. Instead, what I'll do above is place kind of a big cabinet, or rather kind of a dresser style shelving up there. And the last thing, of course, like I said, is to consolidate that 1 heater into 2 and place this wall here with the door. There's nothing fancy needed. It doesn't need a lot of space, this room. So it just needs a central door right here. just like that. So one more over, and there you have it. We walk in, and a relatively spacious little suite actually. And over here, this can be moved in a couple blocks. In theory, the stairs can be pushed in quite a bit, especially if I get rid of this. And that can just be moved to the other side, still giving us a little kind of kitchenette situation for any type of, you know, coffee and whatever you may need, snacks, treats, whatnot. So that can be right here, just like this. And what I do want to do is remove these, but also push the sink out to the opposite side. It'll just make it a little more natural. Like if you kind of think about home design and stuff, we don't really want to have the stove be the first thing. Now clearly I messed up over here by selecting way too much, so let me just reduce that to this, and that will actually slide in quite nicely in this space right here, and still give us the ability to move our stairs in here. This worked quite well, almost too well, because now I actually have to extend the landing out a little bit. It's too far, and it makes my stairs kind of reach too far into the room here. I can't walk past. So if I move this out and down, just like this, will that be enough to have one more step kind of right here? That is tight, but you know, so are airplanes, so is trying to move around in a plane. So that might do the trick. We can go ahead and delete this huge wall, because now we're going to be eating into it for our cargo space, and that's totally good and expected. So you can see here we've gone and deleted way too much, but in essence, it's actually looking quite nice from the exterior, and I kind of like these vertical or horizontal, windows. It gives it a bit more of a sleeker look, almost like a spaceship. So if we go with that for this portion of the build, and then in the bedroom as well, and of course we have a very small little area here. I removed the sink, we just have the mini fridge, but now in here we have a much larger cargo hold. And what I'm going to do is start by dragging this actually forward, and the point of this is to ensure that we can actually fit what we want into this airplane. Now this is getting mighty close to the front there, mind you, but the nice thing with this is that we can fit our Unicon cargo, or a vehicle and a small Unicon cargo back here. Now, how close can we go to the very far end? Well, it seems we can go right to the end, which won't work if you have a large Unicon container there, but if you have a normal one, I think you'll be fine. So this actually lets you configure it in a variety of different ways, including having multiple Unicons, or having a vehicle and Unicon. Yes, it is crowded, but yes, it is also intended to be very much a transport utility type setup. So you really do want to have maximum capacity. So overall looks great from the exterior. Let's see, we open this up, and now we'll have ourselves a pretty big area here. And here's this space, which we'll clean up. But yeah, that's pretty sweet. I cleaned everything up. Now, granted, I will change it to ALTA configuration, but look at this. That looks pretty awesome. Now, I still only have the 4 original bays, except here you can enable the extra pink slot. So previously it's all released, and this actually enables it. Obviously, for weight balancing, this is the last slot you'll want to use. You don't want to just use this one without anything else. And if you have a vehicle in that front slot, then this kind of becomes what you're going to use for in Unicon. So you can see in here. Okay, got to turn on the electrical there. Nice little cabin here, 4 seats. Kind of retro cozy almost. And our regular cockpit with equipment and whatnot. Just to make it clear that this pink slot's a little different, I'm going to actually set a little separator boundary for it as well. So it's kind of on its own little area. And everything now should be plugged in. Of course, there may be random recoloring issues around the place, but I'll deal with them as they come. The primary thing now is to switch it to the ALTA colors. Alright, so the coloring scheme is slowly getting inserted. You could see the colors are quite nice now. Actually, that has to continue on like this. We're going to ignore the windows as we do. On the exterior, we're going to deal with it. Now, I have the new style logo up in the front. It looks sharp there. And then I have kind of the big ALTA Transport logo there. This is kind of a snip I took of another creation. And I'm kind of piggybacking off it for the colors, but I think the better spot to get all this from would be the ALTA locomotive. It's a big train, actually. Alright, I'm going to throw it over there somewhere, just so I can refer to it without having to really eat away at this and have it easily kind of removed afterwards. So the base color for this case, for this plane, is white. Yeah, we could make it that, but I think it's way too dark then. Now we will change the color of this to the dark ALTA blue. And you can see for this vehicle we're using orange. For our ships and stuff we use this red color. And I think the red will actually work a little bit better for this particular application. Especially if we could fill the planes around here and kind of give us this type of a deal. Maybe we don't need too many colors if we could just make it kind of look good as you know, with fewer colors, make it more white rather than colored. And you can see here now we can just go through and swap out all these oranges. I don't know, I just looking at it, I don't want to go simple on the color, but I think it may be too much if I put like an orange above that. Maybe it works, but it kind of clashes with the red. Personally, the red is great, but there is some color clashing, I'd say. Just quickly scrolling through my other creations to kind of see a potential color scheme, something that stands out and that looks appropriate for this. Yeah, I really tend to avoid the orange. It seems the locomotive is really where I kind of utilized it more. So I do think that it probably doesn't work, but what about, instead of the orange, what about this gray for the top part of the aircraft? That actually might be kind of slick. Oops, let's not replace, let's just do this. So if we make the top part of the airplane gray and then make the bottom part just white, that might work. Instead of the red, what if we do orange? That might be more aligned with the ALTA color scheme. I know the red is kind of like a specialty interior color almost. Like I'll put it usually within kind of compartments such as this, for example, or in here they'd be great. But on the exterior, I do actually like kind of the simplicity and more of that orange tone. I do think that it's quite appropriate for this. So let's just see if this kind of does the trick. One quality of life thing that I think would be worthwhile is, in addition, in these last, say, 2 slots or 1 slot, is the ability to fit one of the Uni-loaders. For example, this one, smallest one of all, 30. Can it realistically fit here without eating up this slot. Kind of. So if you have a single container unit, you actually could. So then we would just have to add a connector right here at the intersection, and we'll make it a different color. And this one will actually, that's actually kind of perfect. This one, we could make it a different color. Let's see, we got green, we got orange, we could put a yellow. So in this case, you see here we have enable extra pink slot. Now, we do have a fire extinguisher here, but I could instead raise this up by 1, and in this location say something like enable Uni-loader, or let's not say Uni-loader, well, let's say Uni-loader. Uni-loader yellow R10 slot. Just make it matching this one. Enable extra pink H4 slot, enable Uni-loader yellow R10 slot, and what I have to do is match this up here. So I had a knot that actually turns the magnet on when we want to place something versus that disables it. So that's what the knot will do. So we can go here and say knot, and then up here, and it'll be placed on this one. Oops, not the TV one, but instead it'll be placed on the one up here. So right there. Also, these lights don't even work, or they're not plugged in. So I got to add a second light switch. I could put one right here. I don't want a two-sided switch. I want a single-sided switch. And this will be for the lights. And I'll put a switch right here as well to also turn on the lights in this compartment. They'll be linked together for easy turning on, and then we plug them into this. So that in essence will hopefully brighten up our base substantially. So we got 6 lights. Maybe that's not enough, but I would like to think it is. I mean, you don't have to have a soccer stadium lighting in here. It just has to be good enough to pretty much light up the space to make it visible. But if you see, even in movies, these areas are always kind of dim. But that it does remind me that I actually have to go and fix the OMA version of the airplane with this too. For the OMA version of the plane as well, you could see that this back connector is always disabled unless this front one is enabled. Remember the easy vehicle quick connect thing? Well, if you do want to put a Uni-loader, that actually does not help you one bit. So what we can do is actually add a button to manually enable this one. So I have a special microcontroller called AND NOT, and inside AND NOT, it pretty much means that this here will get triggered. So whatever we have this coming out of, the rear connector release, is the input, as long as it's not, as long as you're not toggling this, and then this can go to there. So it seems to work normally. Everything is now released. If we press this, we end up with this still released and that one not released. And if we press this, then this is not released. So we actually can enable this to be used. So in both these cases, this is false, and now it's back to being true. When you have two creations like this that are identical and that you're working on in parallel, there's a lot of absolute redundancy where you just sort of end up doing rework for the sake of things that aren't perfectly aligned or working. You make a fix in one location and whoops, there it is in the other, etc., etc. But you know, in the end, we will get there. So I'm going to be adding the exact same light switch now. Is that a regular slot? So it is. So anyway, so I have placed sort of the various Unicon containers in here, and I can now enable the bays, everything kind of connects, and I always recommend releasing the side Unicon, meaning these guys here, so you don't get any weird physics going on. And let's turn on our Uni-loader slot. Let's open the door, see if it fits as well. This is going to be quite the experiment now. So drive this in. Now granted, I do have to turn on the bottom magall there. Alright, so that's on. I could also release that Unicon. I don't need it to be also attached there. Okay, now we close the hatch, see what happens to that back wheel. Okay, everything's in. We got 3 containers and a Uni-loader in here. Cool. Let's see if it actually takes off. Quite the challenge now. So we'll fire everything up. Turn on this. We got our handbrake released. Everything is going along quite nicely. And full throttle and up, up, up. Take a look at that. We're carrying 3 Unicon containers and the actual Uni-loader itself. If we go ahead and open the cargo hatch, you can see how epic that is inside there with all that cargo. So there we have it. Thank you for watching this video. I know it was a little long, but in the end, I think kind of cleaned up the creation, gave it 2 very, very nice, useful new variants, and ultimately something that can be used by so many people, and that will just tie in perfectly with the add-on that I know Arcades is working on. He's been testing it so diligently. I'm so excited to kind of go through that one, present it, test it, all that good stuff. This will work perfectly with that add-on or for any other type of transportation type missions or role play that you may be playing. I think that this would work quite well. I think right away people are going to be very happy with the fact that the controls are adjusted, and then from there on we get kind of something that is nice and useful. So thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. Stay tuned for more creations. I do want to give a huge shout out and thank you to all of my supporters. They're awesome. Thank you so much. And I do want to give a thank you to each and every one of you for watching these videos, for participating, for being a part of the community. I think this community is awesome, and I think that we really do just have such a great thing going with all the videos that people put out, other content creators, and of course thank you to the developers for giving us this game, the updates, all that other cool stuff. And a final shout out to all of my Discord moderators and admins. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Until next time, happy Stormworksing, everyone.